Now it's time for Whispers, your number one source for all things paranormal, with your hosts, Jordan Klein and Nick Queen, and produced by the lovely Lola Miller. Whispers is brought to you by West Virginia Penitentiary Tours at the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville. Unforgettable, historical, educational.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. It is 6:09 p.m. I'm Jordan Klein. He's Nick Queen, and she is the lovely Lola Miller back in the booth. How you doing, Lola?
Good. How are you guys?
Oh, I miss you this week.
I know. I miss you too.
You should start coming to location with us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be fun because
yes, it would. It would be unique.
Because we get food.
Haha.
And you know what's good?
What?
Food.
Yes.
Like I said, we're live down at the Market House Grill in Elm Grove. Come out and see us. The Monday special that was running when we were here on Mondays just switches days to Tuesday, and that's a bucket of beer and a pound of wings for $10. $1 domestics and $2 well drinks. It's on Elm Grove, Kruger Street. Come on out. Awesome time. JT's still here for another hour. Come see him. Fun times. Give us a call, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. Oh, I have Nick's volume down again.
Yeah, look, he looks at me like, okay, say something. And I'm like, I can't say anything. You're the one that controls the volume.
Sometimes it's good to have the power.
Sometimes it's good.
Hey, Lola.
Yes.
Lola, have you been watching Lost? Did you watch last week?
Absolutely.
Was that not amazing?
Yes, it was.
That was like my favorite episode of Lost ever.
He's been waiting to talk to you about this for like ever.
I was going to call you over the weekend.
Well, you should have. You should have.
Just be like, oh my God.
Did you notice that tonight now, because Dancing with the Stars is back on, Tuesdays will be their elimination show, they are no longer doing the pop-ups of last week's episode, which I just love those because it explains so much to those of us who have short-term or long-term or any term memory loss that, I just don't remember things from the first, second, third, fifth season.
Yeah, and you've been saying that it's coming.
Yeah, I knew. Well, the minute they would, bring another show back in, and it was Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, we've been saving ours up, Lisa and I have. So we've got them kind of lined up to watch, kind of marathon-wise.
You're going to save it all the way until the night of just the weekend before the finale?
We'll probably start watching them here soon. We've been watching, we're waiting to watch V.
Oh, that starts tonight.
Tonight, yeah. We thought it was last week, and we had it recorded, and they're like, yes, V's back.
Well, but I hope I didn't watch the recap episode. I usually do. I don't think anybody does them as well as Lost does, but I was kind of curious to see how good of a job they did do, because with only 4 episodes that were aired back in the late fall, it wasn't you could probably catch up pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I did not watch that. But I'm excited for that return. And then the bad news yesterday.
What?
Damn it. 24 last season.
Is it?
Yes.
See, I'm on season 3 right now, so I'm pretty good.
They're running out of ideas. There's only so many times.
Kim can only get kidnapped so many times.
Well, I know, but Jack's getting old, and
it's starting to show.
And what they're going to do too is now they can channel all of their energy into a movie. Now I don't know if it's.
That's going to be a long movie.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be a made-for-TV. Oh, you're so funny. 24 hours. It'll be completely all in real time.
Hopefully get free refills on popcorn.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's going to be a movie for the theaters or if it's going to be a made-for-TV movie they did 2 years ago.
From what I was reading, their plan was to do a movie set in maybe like Europe or something, kind of like they did. But it would be a feature film, out in the theaters. Kind of like they did the one where he was in Africa.
Yeah, but that was made for TV.
But that was well. I'm just saying, kind of out of his element though, kind of thing, where
Yeah, where life for Jack picks up somewhere else. Yeah.
When he had when he was with I can't remember the secret whatever service he was with or something.
CTU.
There's a
Yeah, CTU,
Not
counterterrorism.
CTU. No, before he became CTU.
The CIA.
I don't think he was with the CIA. He
Was he like a ranger?
something like that, but he had ran into some issues in like Germany or with some Bosnians. So maybe they'll do something like that, or
Well, it's something from his past. Every season, something from
exactly.
his past crops up. But boy, last night's episode was really, really good. Really good.
Yeah, that was a good
Well,
one.
don't ruin it. I only got a few more months to try to catch it.
Yeah.
He'll forget. Just tell him.
Well, we do. Before we go to our guest, and I do have Jim on the line.
Very cool.
Destination Truth.
What happened?
I'm telling you, best ghost hunter show out there.
Well, Lola, I will try to get the guy from Destination Truth for you.
Oh,
I tried a couple of times, but I kind of they were in the middle of shooting, so it's always hard to because he's all over the place.
Oh, I know. What amazes me is now granted he does have the newest, latest, highest tech equipment that is out there, but every single time he goes somewhere, they get real stuff. They get great EVPs. They've had full body apparitions, and he's not even necessarily. He is
believer?
kind of ghost. Yeah, well, he's not a believer. He tries to debunk everything. This last one was the Great Wall of China, and somehow he got permission from the Chinese government to go on a portion of the wall that is in ruins, first of all, and no one has ever been granted permission to spend the night, and his group did.
Wow.
Then he went to Israel, where there were rumors of a mermaid out in the Mediterranean.
Did he get a mermaid?
There was something that showed up on a camera that, you couldn't prove it because the town that these sightings have been based around is offering $1 million reward for anybody that can come up with proof. And it doesn't have to be a dead mermaid. It can be, just a photograph or something. But strange
looks like somebody
things
cut a woman in half
water.
and sewed her to a fish.
What?
Sorry, I'd do anything for $1 million.
Well, come on, Jordan. We're going over there. I've always wanted to go to the Holy Land anyway, so I think we should go. We'll dress you up. I'll even give you air bubbles to breathe.
I would make one sexy mermaid. Let me tell you.
Wouldn't you though? The only sad part is we wouldn't be able to see those lovely knees of yours.
Oh, and let me tell you,
that's a good thing.
One of my best features.
Well, you do have like the Fiji mermaid.
Yeah, I got an old sideshow gaff of a Fiji mermaid. I'll bring it in sometime to show you.
All right.
You'll like that.
He's got it in an aquarium too, which is.
Really
I'm a sick guy.
strange.
Nick, you want to introduce our guest?
I can do that. All right, Jim Maroney is the author of The Extraterrestrial Answer Book. After experiencing his own close encounter at a truck stop outside of Manitoba, Maroney spent 20 years studying the ET phenomenon. Are you with us, Jim?
I am. You betcha.
Hey, Jim, how's it going?
It is going awesome today. Thank you.
Tell us about this book.
Well, it took a long time, obviously, for me to get around to the point of deciding to write about it. And, if you're going to wade into this subject, there's always, and certainly in my sense anyway, there's a lot of trepidation about going ahead and doing that because of the position that I hold within within my career, and you always worry about your family and how that might affect them and those types of things.
Well, what do you do?
Well, my main job is executive director for a health and safety organization that provides training and services to a whole wide range of municipal governments.
Huh.
So that's my primary job, actually.
Yeah.
So really, when I started looking at this, obviously, I was concerned about if I stepped forward and started talking about it, how would that affect my life, my wife, my kids? My kids are older now, so I don't. I'm not. Well, they have a whole different set of worries as any parent experiences. But really, we came to a point that after studying the phenomena for that length of time, and I knew that it was going to be changing, and that it has been changing over the last 20 and 25 years. That it was really probably an appropriate time to step forward and talk about what I understand about how the phenomenon is changing, because the book is really not about me. It's really about all of us, and that's really why I wrote the book.
So is the book? Well, I'm guessing it's based on your experiences, that you've had. What you say it's about kind of all of us. How do you did you do research on other or other, I guess, abduction or
Yep. Yeah,
sightings?
absolutely. So, when you have your own personal experience, I mean, this is how we interpret the world around us. It's a combination of our own personal experiences and then about, what other people tell us, through educational systems and those types of things. So, but the personal experiences are really the things that define who we are and really define what we come to understand about the world around us. And I used what my experience was, back in 1987, and put that in the mix when I started looking at and studying, the phenomenon itself, and particularly the abduction phenomenon, trying to understand exactly what's going on, and certainly, try to at least predict how it's going to unfold in the future and what that really means for us.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was?
Yeah, actually, in 1987, I pulled into a truck stop. I'd pulled the seat back. I was actually going to try and actually get some sleep. It was in the middle of the night. I'd driven almost 11 hours to that point, and I was young at the time, and I figured, when you don't have a lot of money and you're young, man, you just go for broke. You figure, what, I can save a few bucks on a hotel room. What do I need to stay in a place for? I can grab a sleep in the car if I need to. So I was on this long haul trip, essentially across Canada, to go to my sister's wedding. And I found myself in this little truck stop, and I pulled over to try and get a few hours sleep, and I figured I could get back on the highway again right after that. And but I never did get to sleep. I was in the passenger side, and in front of this diner actually, and all of a sudden, these lights are blasting into the window, and I just thought it was another one of these transport trucks that was actually pulling in to the actual station itself. And then I noticed that the lights, in fact, were actually moving over top of the vehicle, and that they were different colors. Now, I noticed that because of the fact that in the little car that I had was actually a 1987 Honda Civic and had a little sunroof in it. And so that when the lights were moving over top of the vehicle, it was obvious to me that this object was suddenly, on top of the vehicle, not beside it, and it wasn't actually a transportation truck or anything like that.
Now, was this like a busy diner? Were there a lot of vehicles around? Were you kind of by yourself? Was it isolated?
You know what? I would call it a pretty busy diner because it's just off Highway 1 in Canada, which is basically the major highway that joins east to west. And just about every Canadian will travel it at some point in time in their life. It was generally quiet at the time I was there, but I'll tell you, when you try to sleep, there's nothing quiet in a truck stop because there's trucks that continue to pull in and out most of the night. So I would say, it wasn't totally isolated, but isolated enough. I mean, Canada's not really heavily populated by U.S. standards.
Now, are you the only person that witnessed this, or are there other witnesses to this event?
No, I was the only person that witnessed this particular event, and there was actually a transport truck that had actually pulled in behind my vehicle, and it wasn't really an area where the transport truck should actually be parking, but this big transport truck had pulled in and had blocked the vision of the people that were in the diner to where my car actually was.
So the transport truck pulls in and it kind of blocks everything off, and you think that's what the lights you're seeing are, and then something else comes in kind of under the guise and.
Yep.
Does it take you?
Yeah, actually, the next thing I do, this all happens really quite quickly. Suddenly, there was just this intense light, like you're standing lying in a big floodlight. I mean, it was just the amount of light that was shining in was just immense. It's just hard to describe. And then I noticed that the air suddenly, the only way I could describe it is that it felt like there was a density change in the air, or suddenly things got really kind of like, there was no echo, it was very quiet, and there was no sound, absolutely no sound. And I could feel the hair on my arms starting to rise, and I assumed at this point that whatever was above me was emitting this strong electromagnetic field, and that's so it basically charges essentially items or objects around it.
So you could feel it, yeah.
And then instantaneously, almost at the same time this was happening, I was paralyzed, and I couldn't move any muscles at all. I mean, it was very, 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 I shouldn't say any muscles. It was very difficult to move. That's basically the way I would say it. I mean, I could just move my right arm a little bit, and that took an extraordinary amount of effort just to be able to do that.
Well, do you think it had like a trance on you, or do you think that it was paralyzing you, or do you think that the whatever it was like emitting was just holding you down?
I don't know exactly what the technology was that was being applied to me, to be honest with you. I think really what happened was that these beings, what they did is they influenced this driver to basically park his vehicle in a position that would actually block the view of what was going to happen. And when the paralysis was actually implemented by these beings, because they don't want to get hurt, I think they've had probably some experience with us before that probably didn't go very well. So the paralysis part of it is really just in a sense just trying to hold you down so you don't hurt them and you don't hurt yourself. And the next thing I know, I'm standing. The next thing, I'm standing in front of these beings that were distinctly non-human. There was 4 of them, and there were some other beings moving in the background, but I couldn't visually identify exactly what they were, or who they were, or anything like that. And they had like uniforms on. They had like large heads. Typically, the large heads had no ears, they had small protrusions for nose, and small mouths.
How big were they?
They're about 4.5 feet tall, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe 4 feet, 4'2".
Now, when you say their heads were big, I'm thinking 4'2". I'm thinking, maybe a young teen, age kid.
No, their heads were about probably from a body size standpoint. If you're comparing anthropometrically, like a human size and their size, their heads are about 4 times larger than ours would be in a comparative body.
So like the head alone is like the size of the being's chest.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And their eyes were they had blue pupils. They weren't all black. They all had blue pupils, and there was no color variation in their eye structure at all. They actually spoke English, but when they spoke English to me, it was just a few words. They didn't go into long orations or long sentence structures or anything like that.
Now, did their mouths move, or was it like did they use
their mouths
telepathy?
moved actually. When they spoke to me, it was auditory English. It was, and there wasn't any sense of a different type of English to it. They spoke perfect English. There was any sense of or any essence of an accent to it or anything else. But mind you, there were only they're just a very few words.
Yeah.
So my guess is that they didn't use English to speak to each other. They just looked at each other. So my guess is they probably communicate to an alternative way other than just vocal.
Now you say they have like the perfect English. Like what was their voice like? Was it like a calm voice? Was it like James Earl Jones type of Mufasa? Like what did it sound like?
It's difficult to explain. It sounded human. It would be like, why are you angry? Or we're here to help you. Or,
just real calm.
Yeah, just very calm. Not high pitched.
So was it a male voice or?
Yeah, my sense was that they were all males. The ones that I'd first seen, they were. The ship was fairly large. Actually, they took me to a few little areas of the ship. So, it was a large vessel. There was no sense of movement when I was on there. I don't know where we were. I couldn't look out the windows because there wasn't any windows.
So you don't know where you could have been like on one of the rings of Saturn or something.
Yeah, could have been absolutely anywhere. And the experience that I'm explaining, I know how outrageous this sounds, but I must point out that this experience that I've had is also being recounted by many other people around the world, and it's just not a singular experience. To me, what I've learned from part of what my experiences was with these beings is that they actually do have a sense of humor, at least the beings that I had met. And what I got from them and from part of this experience with them is that they're really concerned about the direction in which we're heading, and that's why they're here trying to help us.
They were giving you kind of like a going green message?
Yeah, not so much a going green message at all. It was more of a they're just worried about how we interact with each other. That's their primary concern. They feel that without some kind of major intervention on their part, we're not going to make it as a species.
Now, it sounds like
that's why they're here.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what I've come to understand about this whole abduction thing and is really that what we're dealing with is really an intervention, in essence, not so much contact. A lot of movie programs and a lot of other programs portray this as an idea of contact. It's much more than that. I mean, contact is there, but really at the essence of this kind of relationship is this this intervention that's actually taking place, which makes it really difficult for us to understand what's happening, and it makes it very difficult to come to terms with some of these experiences, particularly on an individual level or even on a social level.
Now, it seems like that they had chose you specifically. I mean, it was like they had set everything up to where they could get to you exactly. Do you know why you were chosen and why? A lot of people feel like they're the ones that, that they were personally chosen by, these, beings. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm
okay,
there.
We heard a beep. I was wondering.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Oh, that was weird. But no, why do you think you were chosen, I guess?
I really get uncomfortable when that other people speak like, oh, I've been chosen or I'm special. It's not about me. It's really about all of us.
Yeah.
Just because I have an experience with it doesn't make me any more important than anybody else. In fact, I'm not going to know more about this experience unless all of us try and take steps forward to demand better information about what's actually happening on this subject. Because we have so many different ideas about it, but yet fundamentally, all of us really just want to know what is really going on. Give us some information that I can actually trust. And I think that's where the next role that we have to play in. So why I was chosen? There's probably something in me that they like. I guess, maybe it's like any relationship. You look for people that you think you can have some kind of a relationship with.
Yeah.
And I think but whatever that means and however they selected it, maybe it's just a timing issue. Maybe they thought, hey, you know what, this guy is going to be so difficult to work with. We're going to have to give him about 25 years just to get to the idea about, working with us, where other people might not need that length of time to get adjusted to this whole idea of this phenomenon, because it's challenging, certainly when you first have these experiences, because it's so outside of the norm and what you would have expected or anticipated. It changes your whole worldview. And it's a struggle, basically, to stay grounded for the first few years.
Now, do you think they have the same kind of concept of time? I mean, you're saying it took you 20-something years, but maybe to them that's not, that long of, of an investment, I guess.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what their concepts of time are. They probably have the ability I think it's going to be different than ours. There's no question about that. Yet, from a time standpoint, they believe that, their presence here and our existence here is all time critical.
Yeah.
That we are, the clock is ticking, and something is going to happen that's going to be a major challenge for humanity over the probably next 20 to 30 years.
Now, did they just take you up to talk to you? Did they do anything like surgically with you?
Yeah, they did some medical procedures on me too, and they planned this whole thing out right from the very moment. This goes if you really look at most abduction phenomena, and the ones that you can basically hang your hat on and say that these seem legitimate, the more you study them, the more you realize that there is a great deal of planning going in behind the scenes on these encounters. And what they did for me is they actually did perform some medical procedures. And the medical procedures were pretty painful. And I, at the time, didn't understand them. I didn't understand what they were doing, and I was pretty angry over the whole thing. I was scared to death, obviously. I thought that I wasn't going to come back alive.
Really? What were they doing?
I don't know entirely like the purpose of what they were doing, but they would insert something into your side or into my side, and it was it would pass right through the skin, but it wouldn't leave any scar tissue.
Really?
So it would just they could push it right through, and it was uncomfortable. And I mean really uncomfortable.
Now we've had a lot of people on the show, talk about their experiences through the abduction, and they say that a lot of it was reproductive.
Yeah, there's some kind. I didn't I don't recall any of those memories.
Yeah.
About reproduction, but I think maybe that I wouldn't rule it out. Let me put it that way, because there is
just because you didn't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. And did they leave any like tracking devices in you? I guess the implants.
I'm aware of one implant that I might have, and I guess what I would say to that is that until we have really definitive proof that these implants exist, and proving that's going to be a real challenge for us because you have to basically prove function. So how do you prove that a device is actually working as a device, and how can you prove that it's actually alien in origin?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of criteria that it would have to go through to basically have proof on it. But personally, I'm convinced that they have the ability to basically bioengineer some kind of devices that, because we're dealing with technology that's maybe a million years more advanced than ours. So
now, do you think that it's something that's happened to you through life, like continuously, or do you think this was like a one-time shot?
It's continuous, without doubt. It's continuous. But I wasn't aware that they even existed until I was 28 years of age. But some of the experiences that I had that evening with them, I recalled essentially that you know what, I had some earlier experiences with them. So it's certainly one of these life things, and it's also a sense that they're very careful about not upsetting us too much, even though you're going to get upset at some point. But they're very cautious about how much they interact with us and how much they upset us. So there's a lot of care and attention spent to understanding who we are and what we are, and I think that's actually a core to part of these experiences as well. But we wouldn't have to remember anything about them if they didn't want to. I mean, if they decided, what, we're going to interact with you guys in such a way that you'll never know that we are interacting with you, they could do that and get away with it. The fact that they're allowing people to actually have these memories and actually recall these memories is really, points to a direction that they want these memories for a particular reason, and the only way that you can conclude from that, or the only thing that you can conclude from that, is it's because it's important for our future and obviously a future relationship with them. So there's a medical component to it. We don't understand at this point in time why that medical component is there, but these beings feel that it's important for abductees to remember that it's there, and that must mean that it's going to have something to do with the future and this future relationship.
Wow. Hey, Lola, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are we ready for a break?
Yeah, we can take one right now if you want to.
Okay, Jim, if you want to hang on there for a minute.
You betcha, I'll hang in here.
All right, our guest is Jim Roney. We were talking about his book, The Extraterrestrial Answer Book. And give us a call, 304-214-1600. Out of the area, toll free, 1-866-514-1600. If you got a question for our guest, we're talking about abductions. We'll be right back.
And now back to Whispers, brought to you by West Virginia Penitentiary Tours.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. It is 6:42 p.m. We are live down at the Market House in Elm Grove. It's out on Kruger Street. Come out and see us. We're here until 8 o'clock, offering $10, or for $10. They're not offering $10. For $10, you get a bucket of beer and a pound of wings. You can get $1 domestic drinks, $2 well drinks, and that's going on until 9 o'clock tonight. And that is the Whisper Special. Come on out here while it's going on. And we'd like the company. I'll turn Nick on just in case he wants to talk.
That's nice.
That's enough. I love this power, Lola.
Yes, I know you do, Jordan, and that's why we allow you to have it periodically.
It's an every other week thing. We gotta let him run wild and then bring him back down.
Yeah, rein him in.
Yeah.
If I was a little bit closer, I could charge you for the beer.
Here we go. Our guest tonight is Jim Roney. His book, The Extraterrestrial Answer Book. And Jim, I had the question this morning. Oh, I didn't have the question. My boss had the question. He wanted to know, if this book, because in the bio it says, the book will answer any question you have. And his question is, what flavor ice cream do aliens like?
I don't know, but there's got to be more of them than us. So if you discover that flavor, you're going to be very rich.
See, and I'd always read, and I don't know where this was from, if this was part of the Scorpio, I think it's Scorpio uh, mission, or whatever,
I don't know.
that they had enjoyed that like EBE1 enjoyed strawberry ice cream or something, and I don't know where that came from.
It's funny. I brought the question up to Nick, and he goes, "Oh, that's easy, strawberry." And I was like, "Oh, okay, Nick."
Well, who
Because
doesn't
I'd
like
read that.
strawberry? I mean,
Who doesn't like strawberry?
or chocolate.
Yeah.
There we go.
The chocolate one myself.
Uh,
I don't know where those. There's a lot of really, I'll call them strange ideas, with respect to this phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's totally okay to expect like all this confusion about what's actually happening and what's real or what's not real, because we are so early in the beginning of our understanding of this phenomenon. Even though, for an example, like myself, maybe 25 years, and I still feel that there's so much more to learn about how this phenomenon is going to change and what's actually happening in the world.
Now, what's some of the strangest ideas that you've come across?
Oh my gosh. Where do I start? Like,
I mean, was there any that you just looked at and were like, oh, that's just crazy, It's
oh, okay. Well, I'm going to throw one out here, like the reptilian idea. Like,
okay.
I got someone was floating that by me. I went, what? You actually believe that? I thought, you mean you believe that? Like that program V, for example. You actually believe that's real? Oh yeah.
And I enjoy going on to YouTube and watching them. Like you'll see the Fox News, they'll have watch the reporter's eyes, and then they'll show it, then they'll focus a little bit more in, then a little bit more in, and it's like, okay, but the further you go in, of course they're going to look weird because it's you're huge pixels. I mean, it's.
I know. Well, you know what? This is a wonderful area of study, but you better go into it with a sense of humor. I discovered it because there's a lot to laugh at here too. And the other thing is too, I don't want to be so pretentious to think that my ideas won't change in this subject.
Sure.
My ideas have changed and evolved, over the years, and I hope they continue to do that. Just as I come to understand more, and other things happen in the world that change our understanding about what's happening. So I think it's okay to have lots of crazy ideas at this point, just as long as it has to have some kind of basis in reality, and just try to remain grounded, not get too, caught up in all of this. Because I think that over the next, 5 years or so, we'll have a much better system in place to basically study the phenomena and then disseminate reliable, trustworthy information to the public.
Now, I've always wondered, and I always ask a lot of people that say that have been researching this forever. How many different kinds of species or races of aliens have you come across? Different types that have visited the Earth.
You know what? I only know of one because that's been my experience.
Sure.
But if there's one, there's more than one. That's using a sense of deductive reasoning. And also, if you look at some of the reports that come from the astronauts and some very reliable reports, the structure of the ships themselves appear to have different technologies to them, so that would support the idea that you're having different races.
Yeah.
But the actual number and the types, we have no idea about. I mean, we really don't. There hasn't been a real formal scientific paper and research and work done in this area to define exactly what and who we're dealing with.
Well, going back to you said no scientific research into it. What exact evidence do we have scientific that they are happening? I mean, I can listen to you all day say it, but I can also that guy's crazy, But I mean, which I'm not saying you are, but
well, you could. That's okay.
Yeah,
Some people do.
But, not as crazy as the reptilian people. But go ahead.
There's always degrees of craziness in there. Essentially, when you look at how the phenomena first started evolving in our society, and like how we first became aware of it, and that's really through some of the work, let's say, of some book writers and of individual people. But I think when it really became scientifically viable to study had to be some of the work that Johnny Mack had actually done from Harvard. He have a Harvard psychiatrist, Pulitzer Prize winning person. He steps into the fray, and he thought, I think I'm going to find some kind of mental disorder that's going to explain all of this type of reporting. And he comes out of it and he goes, oh my God, there's actually a basis in reality to this, because I've applied every scientific means that I know to understanding this phenomenon and explaining it in a way. And he says, and I can't do it. He says, the only conclusion I can come up with is that, it's a real phenomenon, that this is actually happening. And I think that really set the foundation for further study. And we had many more doctors and researchers that actually did work in this area and have, came to the same conclusion. Now, granted, there's still a lot of scientific debate out there over this whole area. And, I mean, hey, we can't even come up with, as scientists, they can't even come up with a consensus on global warming. So what's the chances of us coming up with a consensus on alien abduction?
Yeah.
We're never going to have a complete consensus to it, but I think that it's worthwhile for us to basically look at some of the best information that we have, some of the work that Johnny Mack has done and others in his genre that have really opened our eyes as to what is actually happening.
Now, with your book, what kind of answers would our listeners expect to find when getting into your book?
Well, fundamentally, things like, what should governments, I'll call it the boring part of it. The boring part would be, what should governments actually do? And how should they respond, and why should they respond in this particular way? And ultimately, of course, it's not just the American government, but there's the Canadian governments and other governments around the world that have been looking in this phenomena. But, most of the world has been looking towards the United States to actually take a lead role in this area, and in some ways the U.S. has. But unfortunately, when it's come to disclosure of information on this subject, other countries have done much more work than the U.S. government has. And that's certainly disappointing for a lot of people outside of the U.S. and certainly very disappointing to people within the United States. But when you look at things about, should we tell people that the extraterrestrials are actually here? The answer is yes. And there's lots of scientific evidence to support that. So, but how do you do that? So that's laid out in the book.
Yeah,
and from a personal standpoint, what do you as an individual, what should you expect if this is going to happen? If you do have contact in your life, and it's very likely that you're going to, what does it mean for you as an individual? How do you come to terms with it? How do you cope with it? What should you do with it? You don't have to go and write a book. You don't have to, go out and talk about it. But you can even keep it internally to yourself and just deal with it as a personal relationship kind of thing.
Now,
So,
do you think that like that during this presidency we're gonna have any kind of disclosure,
wow.
or do you think it's gonna be a while?
I think whether it happens, I think it's going to come within the next 5 years. And I'm talking from today to the next 5 years. I'm hoping it's going to happen within this presidency. But there are external forces to the United States that are unfolding right now that that are going to put a lot of pressure on the United States to decide on what they're going to do. At the upper levels. And I don't think Barack Obama has actually been, briefed on the subject and anything else. If you look at all the other presidencies that have gone through there's been a real, I'll call it withholding of information essentially on this subject on UFOs. But when you look at China, for example, who's trying to establish themselves as a world leader, the temptation to announce into the world that they have evidence of an extraterrestrial, presence in our solar system.
So why don't they?
Well, I think it's coming. I think that they're going to be putting some pressure. They have to look at it everything internally as well, but they don't have the same worries that, let's say, maybe our societies might have. If the government just wants to define themselves in all the history books and say, we were the ones that identified it, we were the ones that announced it, I think that's going to change the world. So I think that if it doesn't happen from the United States standpoint, another country might take the lead, and it might be China. So I'd say, keep.
See, I always thought it might have been Europe.
Yeah, I would have thought so too. But again, the military, if you look at what's happened there, even the military is not really sure what to do with it, and their mandate is a little bit different than government. When we say government, there's a federal government that oversees things, and then you have your military, and the ones that are privy to the best information is the military. And they just don't see it as their job to disseminate information on this subject. It's not their role, right? Their role is in protection. So I think there's this disconnect, and it's not just with the United States; it's with a lot of other countries within the NATO organization as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We are out of time. I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us today. Your book, we do have it linked up to our site. It's from Amazon, and you can just go there, whispersradio.com, click on the cover of the book, and purchase the book. Right there, make it easy for our listeners. You there still?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, we had some people walk up to us here at the bar, and we had to, yeah.
Remotes get kind of crazy.
Unfortunately, it wasn't me.
Yeah, I know. You dropped the ball on that one, Jim.
Yeah, sorry about that one. Well, I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you and to share my story with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll have you back on. This was a lot of fun.
It was. It
this
really was.
A good interview.
Myself.
Jim, we'll be keeping in touch. Thank you very much. And if you want to listen to your interview later, it'll be on iTunes in a little bit. So.
Well, it's wonderful. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, see you, Jim.
Okay, enjoy the evening, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, don't go off yet. We still have about 5 minutes.
Yeah. I just was cut. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm flustered. Nick, for some reason, isn't talking right now.
Because he had me turned off. But, yeah. Jordan doesn't really act under pressure that easily. He's more of a cut and run
What
person.
are you talking about?
He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Okay, yeah. What do you think, Lola? Do you think that we're gonna get disclosure in 5 years?
No.
No,
I don't. There have been too many opportunities when the world was in a relatively saner place.
Yeah.
To have had disclosure from any number of governments or agencies, anything like that, and they haven't taken advantage of the fact. And now you have, we're on the brink of an economic war of untold proportions. And then with the
why throw this into the fold?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the movies now coming out about 2012 and this big hoopla about all of that. If you turned over that kind of information, I just think it would create mass panic right now. I'm not like people running around wanting to shoot everything out of the sky, but I think it would create more economic upheaval.
Yeah.
I mean, why invest? I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. And I think part of the problem is you look at any administration, whether it's Obama, Bush, any of them, and are you so secure in your place in history, in the short term particularly, that you would associate yourself with something that, despite the fact that more and more people are claiming to believe that these things exist and that these events have happened, still fringe science at best?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't see it. I think they would be more afraid of their reputation and their, in the image that they're projecting to come out with something like that.
Yeah, I agree. It would be tough. With just the like you said, the economy and everything like that. I can see how it'd be tough that way. But like China and like all these other countries, they can step out because their problems aren't, or our problems aren't their problems. So, do you think? I don't know.
I think it would depend on, because especially if you're looking at a place in history, you're looking at how sure are they that they're correct. It to me that maybe says that they're not as secure in their ideas, or they're not as secure in their understanding of what's happening yet to come out.
No, and if there were concrete proof, that may be a different story, because then you would have a concrete proof that aliens exist, that they have the capability of 100-fold quantum physics, or and the ability to have surpassed us in technology by, like he said, 1 million years. But as long as it is still just a hypothesis, I just don't see that anybody's going to risk associating themselves with something that can't be proven.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless it can be proven.
Well,
I mean,
and that's it. Now, do they have alien bodies hidden away in Area 50, what is it, 51, 54, 56?
51.
Okay.
Can you keep your finger on the button?
You know, so that would be one thing. But I would think that if that were the case, somebody those secrets are hard to keep. Secrets are really hard to keep.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of that is if they do know for sure, there might be there has to be a reason that they're not going to disclose at all, which is the scarier side.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Well, we are up to the top of the hour now, so.
All right. Up next, we're talking about the Shroud of Turin. There's a big TV show about that tonight.
The Real Face of Jesus on History Channel tonight.
Yeah, so we're up to date on this because the guy who's going to be on that TV show is going to be on our show. Looking forward to it. 7 o'clock. It's time for some CNN News. You're listening to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog.
Shroud of Turin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to hour number 2 of Whispers Radio. It is 7:07 p.m. We are live down at the Market House on Kruger Street in Elm Grove. Come out and get a bucket of beer and a pound of wings for $10. $1 domestic drinks, $2 well drinks. That's going on until 9 o'clock tonight. It's 7 o'clock. Time's a tick and get on out here. I'm Jordan Klein. He's Nick Queen. And she is the lovely Lola Miller down there on Main Street in Wheeling. Missing us.
All by myself.
All by your lonesome.
I'm not singing it.
Don't get any ideas, Beauregard.
Yeah. I don't think you could find me anyway.
Like I said, we're down here at the Market House. It's in Elm Grove. Come on out. We got the Whisper special going on. Our number's here, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. Give us a call.
Yeah, so what are you guys eating?
We had French fries earlier.
Yeah, we had some French fries.
Did you not watch Jamie Oliver?
I don't know who Jamie Oliver is, but
Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution.
But I want to explain one thing to you.
What?
Potato is a vegetable. So technically, I was eating a vegetable. And I
ate the heck out of the vegetable.
And according to what I was raised, it was good to eat your vegetables.
That's right. And ketchup is a vegetable because it's made from tomatoes.
And if you want to argue it's a fruit, it's a fruit.
Whichever.
Either way, we win.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Don't ask what we're drinking because I don't think it's good for. It says 100 calories, but I'm not gonna.
Oh no!
Well, no, it's a Dr. Pepper. It's good.
Real or not? Is it real or not?
No, it's real. I love Dr. Pepper.
With sugar. I mean, it's not diet.
Oh no, it's the real thing.
Good.
I don't think they have the. I didn't even look, and I've been trying.
We're not the kind of guys that would go into a place and say, "Do you have diet anything?"
Yeah, I know. I've
actually been trying
to
do better. I've been trying to do better at it, but I forget.
All right. Well, we have Barry is on the phone.
All right, Nick, you want to introduce?
All right. Well, Barry Schwartz was the official documenting photographer for the Shroud of Turin research project, the team that conducted the first in-depth scientific examination of the Shroud in 1978. Currently the co-author of the Shroud book with Ian Wilson, titled Turin Shroud: The Illustrated Evidence. He runs the internationally recognized Shroud of Turin website, and tonight he's going to be on the Real Face of Jesus on the History Channel, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 Central. You can adjust it from there. Barry, you with us?
I'm with you.
So, it sounds like you're busy.
Boy, I'll tell you, I haven't been this busy in at least 4 years.
Now, what's this show on that's tonight? What's this about?
Well, it's first of all, what's amazing about it is a 2-hour documentary, which is very rare on any network, especially about the Shroud. In it, the gentleman who's sort of the man behind the project, Ray Downing, is a computer graphics and 3D animation expert, and he got the idea to develop this program and extract from the images of the Shroud of Turin the man who is depicted there, which many of us believe to be Jesus, and to try and recreate a more accurate and more proper physical representation of the way that man looked, the man that was wrapped in the shroud. So I haven't seen the program. When you appear in these things, you do your best and you do the interview and they shoot it and then they have to edit it and put it all together. So one will hope that in the end it'll be a great program. Having met the folks behind it and seeing their sincerity and their professionalism, I have every hope that it will be a good program and a fair and an honest program. So often that's not the case, sadly, with many of the kind of quick and dirty Shroud documentaries that pop up all the time.
Yeah.
And so I personally feel that this one has the potential to be a good one. But as I said on my website last night, those of us who appear in these things have no control over what shows up on the screen in the end. It's up to the producers and the editors. So we always hope for the best, and I think that this particular program will be very good.
Yeah, it's like last week our guests were on Monster Quest, and they were rather disappointed on the way that their interviews were edited.
They should get used to it. Welcome to television, right?
Welcome to the world.
Well, it's just the nature of it. And look, as a video producer and editor myself of thousands of interviews over the years, I understand what's necessary and how these things have to be done. One of the advantages that gives me when I step around in front of the camera is that I know what a soundbite is. I know how to think in those terms, and I know how to deliver it so that the editor says, oh, I can use that whole thing and not have to cut me up. But that's not always the case, obviously. They still do their editing as necessary. But having the experience that I've had makes it a little easier for me to sort of sum it up in a short enough bite that the editor can cut it in without breaking up my sentence.
And I think that was one of the things they were, there's like, well, we were interviewed for 6 hours, and I'm thinking, well, they're not going to put all that in there,
Interestingly enough, when they were here in August of last year, they were here at my house from about 9 in the morning until 9 at night and shot at least 6 hours of footage. Of course, I have no idea how much or how little of it will wind up in the show, but the producer, man I mentioned earlier, actually, Ray Downing, called me and told me that he had seen that when he saw the first cut of the show, that I was in it about 20 times that he counted throughout the program. So I thought, well, that's good, I guess. I guess I'll find out in an hour or a couple of hours from now.
Now, I last time we talked, and it was, we at that time we're like, okay, we'll have to have you back because, we seemed like we didn't even touch the surface. I mean, we were just getting through the introduction.
And Jordan wasn't there.
And Jordan wasn't
here. I missed out.
And so I've been talking to Jordan today, and, he's kind of in it where the same place I was before, I was like, well, I really don't believe at all. I'm thinking, and I'm interested to see what happens by the end of the show, whether, he's moved one way or the other.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you my doubts now, so that if you have like a quick answer, then you can, not waste all the time trying to explain something to me, I guess.
Sure, go for it.
In the last 2,000 plus years, how many people have died, and we're up against a cloth? I mean, what's to say that was Jesus?
Good question, and I think I can give you a short and succinct answer.
Okay.
The Romans crucified thousands, scourged thousands, speared thousands, but there's only one man in any recorded history anywhere who proclaimed himself the King of the Jews, and to humiliate him, they smashed this thorn bush onto his head, bloodying the top of his head, the back of his head, and all those blood stains are clearly evident on the shroud. Remember that I'm Jewish, or maybe you didn't know that, Jordan, but I'm Jewish, so I didn't sort of.
Well, I had a clue with the Schwartz.
With the name like Barry Schwartz. Did you think I was Italian?
I was Irish.
Irish Barry O. Schwartz, it used to be. Anyway, the bottom line is simply this. It took me almost 18 years to be convinced by the science that this was authentic. And authentic by meaning it wrapped the body of the historic Jesus, not a religious statement.
Yeah.
How do I know what makes me believe this is Jesus? Well, there's only one person that had that particular set of tortures applied to him, the full Roman crucifixion, a scourging with a Roman flagrum, you can see the dumbbell-shaped scourge marks all over the body. They match the size of the actual flagrums that have, been found in archaeological digs. It's exactly the right information. It's all forensically perfectly accurate. And, in the end, I believe that the only person it can be is Jesus. And I'll quote Arthur Conan Doyle to you. He said in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories, when you eliminate all the possibilities, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, is most likely the answer. And by a process of elimination, I've come down to the belief that I know it's not a painting, I know it's not a photograph, I know it's not a manufactured thing, it's not the product of some artist or some faker. It's natural interaction between cloth and body. I don't know what exactly that is, but we can discuss that later.
Now, the imprint on the cloth, is that blood?
No, there are blood stains on the shroud, separate from and different from the image. And so there are really two mechanisms at work. One is the contact mechanism with the cloth up against the body where the blood transferred by capillarity the way any piece of cloth would soak up blood. The blood stains are all forensically accurate, but here's the rub. Wherever there's blood or serum stains on the shroud, no image. The image was formed after the blood got on the cloth, and the blood and serum inhibited the image formation mechanism, which means some artist would have first had to put forensically accurate blood stains onto an empty cloth and then paint a body around them and make it all forensically perfectly accurate. Ha ha ha. We can't even do that today with all the digital imaging capabilities we have.
So what is the image?
The image resides on the top surfaces of the topmost fibrils of the linen. It is a slight discoloration. It is neither paint nor pigment nor photographic silver emulsion, like some people have claimed. There's no silver anywhere on the shroud.
Before you go further, when you say the top fibrils, do you mean that it's not like it's soaked in, it's just...
That's exactly what I mean.
Okay.
That's exactly right. The image did not penetrate into the cloth the way any liquid applied to the cloth would have, or any photographic emulsion would have soaked into the cloth. The image resides solely on the tops of these fibrils. At a close distance, it's almost impossible to detect the difference between the image and the non-image area. It's that subtle. So it's not boldly standing out the way any artist would paint something so that, you don't have to keep stepping back 10 feet away just to see where you're looking. This is definitely not an artist's piece of work. And so, although it took me a long time, it was really the science. Remember, I got to hold this piece of cloth in my hand. I left my DNA on it.
Yeah.
I was there for 5 days and nights. I was totally uninterested and fully expected to find paint and brush strokes and go home. And I'm thinking, hey, free trip to Italy, That was the extent of my thinking when I was 32 years old.
And who doesn't want a free trip to Italy? Yeah.
Yeah, and within 10 minutes of it being laid in front of us, I pulled out my trusty 10x magnifier and immediately started looking at the image. And like I said, up close like that, I couldn't even tell the difference between image and non-image areas. It's that subtly different. So this isn't something that was applied. This is a change on the surface of the cloth. And that change may well have been a chemical reaction with a treatment the cloth was given in its manufacturing. When you make a piece of cloth out of linen, it's kind of stiff. Linen is from the flax plant. It's a waxy outer surface. It's not a soft. It's not like cotton. And so they would wash the cloth after it was woven in soapweed, which is a naturally occurring detergent, saponaria, from the plant saponaria, and it acts like a sort of a fabric softener. Then they would rinse that and air dry it in the sun by evaporation, depositing a surface layer just a few microns thick of this saponaria or soapweed residue. And I believe, and the chemists who have studied it believe, that may well have been impacted by the amines coming out of the dead body, causing something called a Mallard reaction, which is what makes beer its golden color. Same chemical reaction. So it is a well-known, well-documented chemical reaction. And that, from a scientific point of view, might be the best explanation for the image on the shroud, and it fits all the image properties pretty well. Now, of course, this being Easter and the shroud coming out on April 10th for public display, I would be remiss if I didn't say that many people believe that this is evidence of the miracle of resurrection. As a Jew, of course, resurrection is a Jewish concept, comes out of the Old Testament. I, unfortunately, because I was a member of a scientific team We can't go into a lab and resurrect people to see what kind of images we can make. So there's no real scientific way to test for resurrection. That's a test of faith, not science. So I always tell people that if the chemical reaction that I mentioned a few minutes ago, if that happened, first of all, statistically, the odds would be in the billions to one that that could happen. So the real question is, what are people looking for in terms of a miracle? Most people have been conditioned to accept the Cecil B. DeMille version, bolts of lightning and thunder, and the clouds get dark, and the way I see it, if God wants to put an image on a piece of linen, he doesn't have to go through the theatrics.
Yeah, you just do it.
And so I feel that what we may have here, however the image got on there from a scientific point of view, this is symbolic to those Christians to those who are Christians, and I think, if nothing else, documents the passion of what the historic Jesus suffered, which is pretty amazingly horrible, and is a valid document, an archaeological document, if you will, of what was done to that man, because it's all there, every bit of it, and all forensically absolutely accurate.
Now, the photograph that, if you Google, the Shroud of Turin, and the photo that you get, is that your photograph?
Probably not, because I've been very careful about copyrights. That's probably from the 1931 photographs, which have sort of been out there for decades. So it's much harder, even though they are copyrighted, it's much harder to enforce. I've been pretty much a stickler for that, because I don't want my photographs, which, by the way, are easily identifiable as different from the ones that you look at online, other than on my website. I want to make sure that my photographs don't show up on coffee mugs and T-shirts and bed linens and lampshades. These are all real requests that I've received.
Really?
And I've taken about 4 people off eBay who've swiped them off my website. I'm glad. I hope everybody's listening. Every image of the shroud on my website is digitally watermarked, and I can prove in a court of law they're my photographs. So don't bother. Just ask first. You'd be surprised at what I'd be willing to allow if people were only professional enough and honest enough to ask me first.
Barry, what is your website? I want to look it up right now while we're on the air with you.
www.shroud.com.
Oh.
It's the oldest. It's the first website. Somebody asked me once, how'd you get the name? And my answer was, it was available. But, of course, that was in 1995.
Yeah.
So not just last week.
So how do you spell shroud?
SHROUD.
Okay.
Who asked that? Was that Nick or Jordan?
That was Jordan.
Come on, Jordan.
Nick is the one with the 2 bachelor degrees.
I'm an English major. I would never ask that question.
Okay.
I don't think. He's not.
I'm a liberal arts major. We don't spell too good.
Hey, listen, I graduated with a degree in photography. Tell me about being a liberal arts major.
There we go.
I get it.
Now, what are I'm looking at the picture, and there seems to be, you could tell, I guess, where the shroud was folded, along the sides of the body, and there's two triangle looking things.
No, those aren't folds.
Oh, okay.
Tell you what they are. Now, the shroud was folded when those burns got in there. In 1532, shroud was in Chambray, France, and the chapel caught fire, and the box in which it was stored, the reliquary, also caught fire, and I think we believe that perhaps a ceiling log that was on fire fell onto the box and perhaps broke through it, burning the shroud. And when it was unfolded, it caused a series of very distinctive burns and scorches along either side of the image. If you look closely, you'll see it did take out the shoulders pretty much, burnt those away, but most of the rest of the image was left intact. Those triangles were ultimately repaired 2 years later in 1534 by the Poor Clare nuns, who sewed 30 triangular patches into the shroud to fill those spaces, and then also sewed a backing cloth onto the back of the shroud to stabilize the entire cloth because it had been weakened by the fire. So the first thing you see when you look at the shroud, especially if you're looking at a natural color image of the shroud and not that black and white high contrast version, the first thing you're going to see are these dark scorches and burns that run down the length of the shroud. And between those, much more subtly, is the image of the man, head to head, ventral and dorsal, of the man and his body.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Was that good enough answer?
Yeah, he's kind of speechless. He's still
No,
looking at the
I'm still
picture.
looking at the picture. Okay.
Okay.
trying to, like I see the triangle things. So those are just pieces of cloth that were sewn in.
Yeah, and in 2002, the Turin authorities sort of clandestinely and secretly and without consulting any of their own scientists or anything, about a half dozen or 10 people decided that it needed to be restored. I mean, personally, I never heard of remodeling a relic before, but but that's what they opted to do. They removed all those patches, the triangular patches. They removed the backing sheet. They scraped away all the charred material. They vacuumed the shroud, eliminating any future possibility of polish studies. They smoothed it out and got rid of many of the creases and folds that were in the cloth, so it was 7 or 8 centimeters longer when they were finished. They then sewed a new cloth to the back of the shroud that's much brighter and whiter, which will make the image even less apparent on the cloth because of apparent contrast, we call it.
Yeah.
And nobody did any chemical analysis of the new cloth they sewed on the back to determine if it had been treated in a way that could be long-term harmful to the shroud. So there you have it. They did this without consulting science and made some serious errors in the judgment of many of the experts on the subject.
So we might lose, the shroud just because
Well,
people weren't too careful on their fixes.
in all fairness, it is now stored and preserved in a much better manner than it ever has been in its history. And it is now kept sealed in a case instead of rolling it up on a dowel like they did for so many years. It's now stored flat. It's stored away from any light. It's in a sealed container, very much like the Declaration of Independence is.
Oh, wow.
It's got nitrogen and argon atmosphere, temperature and humidity control, all computer controlled, so that it's sealed from the polluted air of Turin, which is a kind of an industrial city. With all of these controls, with no light, with no rolling it up and unrolling it as they did for centuries, the shroud is better preserved than it ever has been. Now, if there's some chemical composition in the cloth they sewed to the back of it, it only will be time that will tell us what harm it might do, but it's unlikely that the image is going to get faded away or disappear, although by sewing a brighter white cloth behind it, they cut the apparent contrast to the eye.
All right, now I have a quick question. I've been looking here on Wikipedia and going just all over the place trying to find stuff. I found this interesting. It talks about in 2004 in the Journal of Optics. There was two gentlemen, Magilio and Fonti, that talked about a faint second face on the back side of the cloth.
Yeah, that's my dear friend Julia Fonte.
Okay. Now,
I spoke with him today by email. So,
great.
Nice.
Here's the deal on that. On the back side of the shroud, which was revealed only for the first time when they did strip away the backing cloth and photograph the back of it, around the hair and beard on the front image of the man, ventral image, there seems to be some imaging on the back side of the cloth. However, that's about the only place you're going to see it. There is no imaging for the body or anywhere on the dorsal side of the image, or anywhere else on the body, only around the hair and beard. And if I go back to my Mallard chemical reaction theory I mentioned earlier, that would be consistent with that because the hair would trap these amines and you would get a higher concentration of them to impact the surface of the cloth and perhaps penetrate the cloth and hit some of the saponaria residue that might be on the back of the cloth. So that's really consistent with the chemical theory that my friend Ray Rogers had proposed. He was on our team back in 2005.
Now the Mallard reaction, and I've tried to read through it, and I sort of understand it, but is it saying? I mean, is it possible that this could happen on, let's say, Jordan, unfortunately, passes away? We wrap him in the same kind of linen.
Well, when you say that, right off the bat, remember you're talking first century manufactured by the ancient method. It won't work on modern bleached linen.
Okay, so let's say for somehow I found that, or would this happen to any body?
Well, if it happened to any body, there would be more of them, right?
Well, here's the other problem with that theory. What happens to a burial shroud when it's put in a tomb with a body? It decays right along with the body. As a matter of fact, the decaying body causes it to decay much more rapidly.
Okay, so in other words, we're not going to go and dig up Jordan in 3 days and... take the cloth back.
That's the point. That
Yeah.
it might occur. It might well be. Now, remembering that they're not using saponaria anymore, so it's pretty difficult to repeat this theory in practice and do an experiment. You'd need first of all, a cloth manufactured by the ancient methods, following the way the shroud would have been manufactured, and then you would need a fresh body 4 hours old, neither of which is that easy to obtain these days. So
and then 2,000 years to let it settle.
Well, and
only 3 days, right?
Well,
I mean the shroud.
Right, exactly, and we don't know that this isn't a common occurrence, although we do know that modern linens aren't made the same way, so they wouldn't have that chemical reaction occur. But I would say this, is that it is a possibility that other similar images might have occurred somewhere throughout history, particularly from, ancient times when linens were made this way. But those linens decay in the grave with the body, and so we don't have the results to look at. The thing that makes the shroud unique is that this burial shroud was separated from the body it covered before that body began to liquefy and decay.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's not like the body was in there all those years. It was only there for 3 days.
Well, no, I was thinking because it sat, somewhere for the last 2,000 years.
Oh yeah.
Without the body, so like whatever stain or whatever you want to call it that was on there.
But now the image itself, though, was reported. What's the earliest? Because I can't remember from the last conversation. What's the earliest that this image was recorded?
Well, there's something called the image of Odessa, which goes back to about 900 A.D. After that, there was something called the Mandilion that they had in Constantinople, purported to be exactly what the shroud is. It disappeared when the city was sacked by the Crusaders. It disappeared for about 150 years. But, when you go sack a city, you don't go home and say, look what I got. You don't go around bragging about it. And recently...
that was Istanbul, right? Sorry,
yeah,
I had to...
It's now Istanbul, Turkey, right.
The song.
Recently, some evidence came out of the Vatican archives that showed strong supporting evidence that for 150 years the Knights Templar had it.
Really?
And kept it in their possession. And then it shows up in the historic record again, mid-1300s, in the hands of a French crusader named Geoffrey de Charnay. Interestingly enough, his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, 150 years earlier, had participated in the sacking of Constantinople. And suddenly it shows up in his hands in France, and he builds a little church in Lirey and starts to display it. And from that moment forward, it remains documented without any break in the chain of custody. But you're right, there are gaps in its history that the skeptics like to say, well, that proves it's a fake. Well, there's gaps in the history of the King Tut tomb, but nobody complained. If this, I'll tell you what my little Jewish mother said, that if this were any other man than Jesus, nobody would care. This from a little old Jewish lady from Poland, And she also said that, of course, it belonged to Jesus because they wouldn't have kept it for 2,000 years if it hadn't. So, it's interesting that it's the Christian folks that I deal with that are most often the skeptics. All my Jewish friends and even some of my Muslim friends say, well, look, you've studied it for 30 years scientifically. If you're convinced, good enough for us. So, it's an emotional issue. We're dealing with people's faith. We're dealing with the fear of some people that perhaps their line of thinking might not be consistent with this, and this might challenge their faith or challenge their beliefs. You're dealing with a very controversial topic. And where else on this planet do science and religion virtually come face to face, well, if you'll pardon the pun, on a piece of cloth? This is the most studied artifact in human history.
And everybody seems to be in acceptance, It's not, with science and religion, it's kind of, like you said, you have, Jewish and Muslims saying, maybe it is, Along
and
with
Christians too, but the biggest, most vocal skeptics are either atheists or Christians that are.
Christians are a tough bunch too. I'm one of them.
I know. I hang out with them all the time.
Let's see, and I don't understand atheists. Number one, what do they care?
Well, they care because it might challenge their belief structure.
Well, that's true, but
or lack of belief structure.
I can't, for the life of me, think of why a Christian would not want to believe that this really was.
I did another show a couple nights ago, and a guy called up and he said, "Look, my whole faith has been based on seeing, or on believing without seeing. Now this thing comes along. Why? I mean, I don't need this for my faith." And my answer was, "Yeah, well, we live in pretty lousy times, and remember that it's only in the last 30 or so years that science has taken a serious interest in this. And the last 30 years haven't been the best in our history. Maybe God figures that we need a little help. I don't know."
Yeah, he might not need to see it to believe it, but other people might.
And that's the point. I told this man, "Look, you may be very strong in your faith, but I know many people who have doubts." And I pointed out that even in the Gospels, there's Thomas who didn't believe until he put his hand in the wound. I mean, you talk about wanting to believe and about needing to see. You don't get much more intense than wanting to put your hand in the wound to see if it's real or not. So
Yeah.
I understand the Christian belief, and that that faith is not reliant on evidence, but faith implies belief without evidence. And
Here's
you
some
know,
evidence.
God may have wanted to have us to have this to make us think about it.
Now, looking through your website, I was surprised that this isn't the only miraculous image held by the Roman Catholic Church. I came across something, the Veronica's veil.
Well, Veronica's veil is a traditional mythological legend about a woman who wiped Jesus' face as he was on the Via Dolorosa carrying the cross towards the hill. The problem with that is, if you look at the Latin root of the word Veronica, it's veras and ico, which is true image. So this is more of a mythological thing, although in Rome and St. Peter's they do have what they call the original Veronica, and it's just a kind of a half moon shape with a jagged bottom, which probably used to contain a painting that's now darkened and disappeared.
Is it kind of like on Forrest Gump, where he's running and gets the mud in his face, and he just like grabs a shirt and wipes it? He's got the smiley
exactly
face.
that idea. But the Veronica, I don't really put much faith in it being anything credible as a real artifact. There's another cloth called the Sudarium of Oviedo, however, and that's in Spain, and it's documented back to the 6th century. And it would be what they, in the Gospels, it talks about a separate face cloth folded and put to the side. That would have been a blood-soaked cloth. And what we have in Oviedo, Spain, the Sudarium, is just that, a blood-soaked cloth. You can see where the nostrils and mouth were. Fluids came out, both blood and other fluids from the body. This cloth would have been wrapped around the man's head after he was taken off the cross. Look, we still do the same thing today. If somebody gets killed in an accident on the freeway, they cover his head right away. And so that tradition goes back thousands of years. They would have done that with Jesus, and they would have had to keep it in the tomb because Jewish law requires that any blood or anything from that body be buried with that body. And that also is another reason why the shroud disappeared so quickly from the record and maybe was never mentioned in the Gospels specifically. It would have been against the law for the disciples to keep that cloth. It had blood on it, and it's supposed to be buried and not held in possession. And yet they would not have thrown it away or walked away from the tomb and left it behind. They would have taken these things and they would have secretly hidden them away and passed them on through generations as a secret treasure of what they're purported to be. So it makes sense that we don't have the first image of Jesus with the split beard looking like the man on the shroud, 285 AD in the Commedia catacombs in Rome. And that's the first time Jesus was depicted looking like the man of the shroud. Then for another 100 years or so after that, they went back to the old Roman look, which made him look, with a bald head and a circlet of olive leaves looking like a Roman emperor. And then suddenly after about 600, things start looking like what I would call the familiar Jesus that we are familiar with today.
The white guy with blue eyes.
All the iconography of the church. And many of the icons, by the way, have little things in them like the crease that's on the shroud below the chin. Many of the icons include that. That means they'd seen the Shroud of Turin, and these icons go way, way back. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of strong. Look, I didn't get involved with this thing because I planned someday to go around preaching for the Shroud of Turin. I expected it to be a fake and go home.
Yeah.
And the frustration I had was many years later when I became convinced by the science, the public was getting total nonsense through the media about it, and it came to my kind of knowledge that public didn't have access. I was privileged. I had all the inside stuff on this piece of cloth, and the public wasn't getting any of that. So that was the reason for building the website, is to share with people the same scientific evidence that ultimately convinced me, a quote non-believer, that this object wrapped the body of Jesus. Now, just as an archaeological object, I mean, that's still very important. Whether or not he was the Messiah, I'll leave to the theologians.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's going to be coming up soon to be exhibited. What you said was, what, April 10th?
10 April through May 23rd.
May
Correct.
23rd? Okay. Now, now, are you going to be going over to take a look, or?
I am. I'll be there from about May 10th through the 20th, and then on the 21st I fly down to Rome to lecture at the University of Rome. Matter of fact, to share the story, I had one of the priests from the university was here visiting and spent a few nights here at my house, and he invited me to come and speak at their university, which is run by the Legionnaires of Christ. And I asked him, Father, I said, how often do you ask Jewish people to come and speak? And he said, well, you might be the first. And
there
so
you
I
go.
thought, well, how can I refuse that invitation? So I'll be doing that as well.
Now, I totally drew a blank. The show tonight, I know they're going to be using a computer to kind of like you try to see the real face of Jesus.
That's correct.
Now, were you in the process of that at all?
I wasn't involved in the actual computer graphics process, but they worked from a set of my photographs and a set of the 1931 photographs.
Now,
so I have not seen any more than anybody else has in the press.
So haven't seen what the 3D image is yet?
No, of course, that's the big reveal at the end of the show, I'm sure.
Oh, so you can't give us any little hints?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said you can't give us any little hints?
Well, I can't because I haven't seen it. I mean, all of the news release, including Good Morning America this morning, when they got to that part of it, boom, they cut away. That was it. They're not going to let us see it. They're not allowed to show it because History Channel wants you to watch the program.
Oh, of course.
So I have not seen it. And, you know, like I said earlier, when you do these things, you get interviewed, and 6 or 8 months later, you show up on TV, and you kind of get to see it with everybody else for the first time.
Now, what do you think it's going to look like?
Finished cut of a show until it's aired.
I've noticed, you know, I'm sitting across from Nick and he's scrolling back and forth through. He's kind of compulsive, so it's like back and forth through the same two pictures over and over and over again. And it's got the black one and the white one, and it looks like the black one is you know more correct. Is the white one like a negative? Like,
well, actually, just kind of the opposite of that.
Okay.
What's on the shroud has its lights and darks reversed like a photo negative.
Okay.
Because we're used to seeing what? Light highlights, dark shadows. But, you know, when you look at a photo negative, it's the inverse of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's on the shroud, the inverse of that. When you take a photograph and look at the negative, that's what the black background one is. That's the way the shroud looks on a photo negative, and all of a sudden, the lights and darks become natural. And you see the face much more naturally appearing.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. It looks more like the face, I guess.
Isn't that amazing?
Now
that's the point.
Now going back to you were talking about the Mallard effect. Wouldn't it be, to me? I mean, if it's just being, I'm trying to make in my mind, like if you let's say if you laid somebody down, or you wrap them, then it would not be photographic, I guess, or like a negative. Does that make sense?
Well, it's hard to say because we really only have one example of an image like this anywhere on this planet. And, of course, there have been hundreds of attempts to duplicate it, and I've probably looked at every one of them in the last 32, 33 years, and nobody's even gotten in the ballpark. It's easy to make something that looks like the shroud. There are lots of photos online you can use as a reference, as you already know. So you can easily, if you're an artist, copy that and make it look like the Shroud of Turin. But then you have to withstand all the scrutiny that the shroud image has gone through.
Yeah.
And that's the chemical and physical properties. And nobody's even gotten in the ballpark with that. The only thing that's close is this Mallard reaction, at least at this point in time. Now, there's some people who theorize that there was some form of radiation that we've yet to discover and that perhaps that created the image. Well, how do you address that scientifically? You can't use one unknown to prove a different unknown.
Yeah.
So all I can say is when you talk about a realm of science that's yet to be discovered, you've left the realm of science itself, and now you're talking about something hypothetical.
And I think that was
Could be
something.
valid, but who knows?
Yeah, that was something because Jordan was in here last time. The group that you went over with was from the Jet Propulsion Lab, correct?
Well, our team members included members from the Jet Propulsion Labs, from Los Alamos National Laboratory, from Sandia Laboratories, from the Air Force Weapons Laboratory, from Rocky Mountain Thermograph, and dozens of other, or maybe a dozen other organizations. Oriole Corporation, which is a spectral company. And so it was an independent group of scientists who joined together with no payment. We were all volunteers to study this object and prepare the best non-destructive data gathering set of tests that could be done circa 1978. And we spent almost 2 years planning before we ever left for Italy. And when we got there, we were given 5 days and nights to acquire the data. And then we spent 3 years afterwards reducing the data, studying it, drawing conclusions, writing papers, submitting them to peer-reviewed scientific journals, and that's where all the scientific evidence resides. So if people say, oh, well, the STIRP team were a bunch of weirdos or whatever, yeah, but look in the scientific literature and you'll find that all of the scientific data that exists on the Shroud, almost every bit of it, came from our team. So the primary database of what we truly know about the Shroud of Turin came from our efforts.
Now, the other members of your team, what were their feelings? I mean, did they agree with you that it is a good representation of the historic Jesus?
Some of them did. Some of them didn't matter to them. They were not interested. Somebody said recently, some skeptic said that, we were all a bunch of religious fanatics. Well, I'll promise you this, that if religion had been brought up as a part of what we were doing, I'd have been gone, and so would 75% of those guys. Not that they might not have religious beliefs, but they kept them separate from the science. We all understood that this was science and that our faith had to be sort of put on the back burner and kept separate from this because we were going to gather data about something that's very controversial. And so there were 3 Jews on the team. There was one evangelical Christian. There were some Catholics, some Protestants, probably some atheists and some agnostics, and probably any other label you can think up. There was probably at least one of them on our team. And so
Scientology
wasn't the issue, nor was proving the Shroud authentic. All we went to do was figure out how was this image formed on this cloth. And interestingly enough, after all that effort and all the time that was spent and all the data that was gathered, reduced, and published, we could not answer that one question. We could tell you what it's not a painting, not a photograph, not an artwork of any kind, not a manufactured relic made by some faker or some forger, but we couldn't give you a single mechanism that could account for the chemistry and physics that's relevant to that piece of cloth. So, that doesn't prove anything by itself, but it does indicate that, look, think about this. The guys from JPL, one of them was head of the imaging on Voyager, Viking, Mariner, and Galileo.
Wow.
Few. Because conventional wisdom was the Shroud might be a painting, we took with us all the tests that are used typically for authenticating of paintings. So we went looking for that. And guess what? How long do you think it would have taken this team of eminent 24 scientists? How long do you think it would have really taken to figure out if it was painted or not?
Yeah.
An hour, 2 hours? How long do you think it would have taken? It would not have taken very long to determine if this was painted, and we'd have gone home, and that would have been the end of it.
You know what, Barry? Everybody knows I am not religious, quote unquote, in the least.
Mm-hmm.
But why can't anybody just say, God did that. God left that image for us without having to prove it scientifically. That's, everybody can throw all these tests and it could be this and it could be that. To me, I just believe it's a miracle. And God left that there for us.
Lola, I don't have any problem with that philosophy. I personally believe that, when somebody says to me, well, this Mallard reaction that I talk about, I said, look, how hard would it be for God to make an image on a piece of linen using whatever mechanism, if he truly created the universe, he would have created that too. So how hard would that be?
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem saying when people say to me, well, look, I don't care about any of the science. To me, this is proof. This is fortifies my faith. And I say to them, fantastic. But I also tell people, look, this did not come with a book of instructions. It did not.
No washing directions.
It does not tell us what to think. And I tell people that the answer isn't on that cloth, but in the eye and the heart of the beholder. Each person has to decide for himself what it means.
Bravo, Barry. Bravo.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. And I'm not, if somebody came up to me after one of my lectures once and said, well, that's a great lecture, but you'll never convince me. And I looked at the guy and I said, well, I'll never try. What makes you think I care what you believe? I said, listen, that's not my problem. That's between you and God. You work it out with him.
Yeah.
And he just kind of was a little shocked at my response. But I'm not on a crusade to convince people or convert people or change their minds. I'm just saying, look, if you're going to have an opinion, here's the real evidence from the people who studied it. You decide what it means.
Yeah.
Read page 1 of Shroud.com. Given the facts, you should be able to make up your own mind about this.
And I went into it just 50 minutes ago. I was very questionable on what I thought. And, you're swaying me.
Well,
And
you know what? I'm not even trying.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just giving the facts.
Well,
you were there, I wasn't. I really didn't know anything about it.
And there's the answer to what a nice Jewish boy like me is doing involved with this. Isn't it funny? God always seems to pick a Jew to be the messenger.
We're a good breed.
And I figured that, that I didn't want to be on that team. Why did God put me there and keep me there in spite of my own protests? Because obviously it makes more sense now to me from this end of my life. Think about this. The photographs I made in 78, any competent professional could have done just as good a job, maybe even better. Those photographs have become pretty much unimportant to the 12-plus million people that have seen it through my website and the millions more that have seen it in my radio and TV appearances and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so think about this, that I have become the messenger. And as the official documenting photographer to begin with, I had all the goods. And I was feeling guilty. Jews and Catholics always feel guilty about something. and I was feeling kind of guilty that I had all this stuff. What am I supposed to do with it? I felt I hadn't finished what I'd begun. And I believe that the website has become the fulfillment of the obligation that came with the privilege that I had to be in that room. There were a billion people on this planet who may have had more right than I did to even be there. But I was there, and not for me. So who else could I have been there for than to share this with everybody out there who's interested? And for those who aren't, more power to them. I don't care. I'm not keeping score. All I know is I am compelled to give people true access to the facts because they don't generally get it in the media, sadly enough. And I felt that it's important that people to whom this really matters have access to the facts.
Well, everybody, the show that we've been talking about primarily is on the History Channel tonight. If you're in the Wheeling area, it's on Comcast Channel 53 at 9 o'clock, and then it's going to be rebroadcast at 1:01 in the morning. So you have
also
2 opportunities to see it.
Also, on our website, along with his book and his webpage, we have a link to where you can watch the show.
Oh, great.
And it says on your website also it re-airs again on Saturday, April 3rd, 8 to 10. I'm not sure if that's in our area, but I'm pretty sure.
I think it is. And I think I listed Eastern times there.
Yeah.
Typically because that's the way the channel delivers the information to us based on Eastern time. So I just copied that and put it there. So I'm guessing that it'll show up in the schedule as planned.
Now you also mentioned another show here, and I'm guessing this was one that you're not a part of, but it's called Touched by Jesus on.
It was on last night.
Oh, okay. I just saw that.
They used old footage of me that they had from a previous show I'd done from Geographic.
Barry's B-roll.
It was old B-roll. That's what it was. But that show, again, it's. I'm not comfortable being real critical, but I'll say that. Let me just speak in general terms that a lot of these networks now, whatever they do about the Shroud, in the end, they wind up turning it into some kind of a nasty attack on Christianity. Now, I'm not a Christian, so I can say that I have seen this anti-Christian bias. I didn't used to think it was there, but now that I've taken this, involvement with the Shroud, I really see that for some reason they don't want to give an honest review of what this cloth is and what it might be. And I'm not saying all networks are that way or that all programs are that way, but the one last night was somewhat that way, and it kind of was not what I consider one of the best that I've seen.
Well, it just seems to me that particularly in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years,
yeah.
every single thing that is good is made out to be frivolous or ridiculous, or somehow somebody's trying to punch holes into every single thing, because they just don't. It's like they don't want good things brought out into the light or something. I
can't figure it. You're right. I mean, remember that this I don't have the same emotional attachment that some people might have. And I would think, why wouldn't people want the truth to be available?
Yeah.
And what's the harm there? But since you're talking about criticism, somebody once wrote me an email, and being an editor and a writer myself, I'm always looking to be succinct. Best email I ever got, 6 words. It's a fake. Get a life.
Oh, God.
I was so impressed that I wrote him back a 2-word reply, well put.
I was thinking another 2 words.
Yeah, I was too.
Well, listen, I was so impressed. Listen, if you think about how complex those 6 words really were in what it was saying, it's a fake. That's a whole commentary right there. Get a life, a whole commentary about me personally. I thought, wow, how brilliant. To be able to get it down to 6 words, I was really impressed. So I just said, well put.
That's nice.
I don't know if he got the tongue-in-cheek that when I sent back the response, I never heard from him again.
Barry, I want to thank you very much for being a part of our show. It being, so close to Easter, it's kind of what the season is for us Christians.
Sure,
and your research through it, it helps out. I guess, you either believe it or you don't, I guess.
Well, let me take this opportunity quickly to wish all my Christian brothers out there a joyous Easter.
That's
Thank
great.
you, Barry.
That's great. Thank you. And
Thank you.
And I want to, thank you for your research. Thank you for being on the show. And I'm sorry for the background noise.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. It's worse there, I'm sure.
Yeah. When the show airs, maybe give us an email. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to start here in about an hour.
Yep.
Okay, so. Yeah. Let us know what you're thinking of it, and cause next week we'll bring it up. We'll be like, hey, Barry was happy with it, or Barry was like, what in the world?
You know what? I don't think I'm going to have that second reaction. I'm hopeful that
Jesus looks like me.
Yeah, if it's accurate, no matter what position it takes, I don't complain.
Yeah.
Accuracy is all I look for, and truth. But often what we get is nonsense and attacks that are completely unfounded, and that bothers me.
Okay, well, we'll be waiting to hear what you think.
Yeah, Barry, we are out of time. Like I said, we got your book, your website, and a link to see the show on whispers033010.mp3. And your book there, you can just click on it and purchase the book.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all that from all of you.
And this website, very easy, shroud.com.
Don't ask me to spell it. Ask Nick.
Yes, we know.
Hey, Barry, see you later. Happy
right, guys,
Easter, or happy Passover.
All right.
Bye-bye, Barry.
Bye, Barry.
Yes?
So what do you think, Jordan?
Like I said, I'm more welcome to believe it. Because I really didn't know. I didn't know anything about it. And to me, it was just a cloth with some dead guy on it. And I think there's been a lot.
Kind of still what he's saying it is.
Well, I mean, kind of, but I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of people that's died in the last 2,000 plus years.
Sure.
That could be anybody. But I mean, with what he said and the time signature and all that kind of good stuff, yeah, I can be open. If I can be open to half the stuff we talk about on this show, I can be
more open than Bigfoot.
Yeah, more open than Bigfoot.
Thank goodness.
Now, I do want to thank, because we haven't got much time, thanks, Barb, for our
Barb brought us
candy.
She brought us some little candy baskets.
Yes,
and
she
we
brought
didn't get
one
to talk
down
to her,
here for me, too. How sweet she is.
We're all candy friends.
And I love candy.
Yeah.
I know.
Who would have knew?
I've already eaten half of it.
We're about to start.
We're about to start. We're going to embellish.
Okay.
Next week?
Next week, we have Margaret McElroy. Let me make sure I'm saying the name correct. Yeah, Margaret McElroy. Somebody Lola wanted to talk to, talking about 2012. So it's going to be fun.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, I was going to say it's from the RTR. So.
Yep.
Yeah, you remember now.
Yep.
Yeah, so she's coming on.
She's gonna blow holes in it, is what she said.
You think so? Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, and I'm looking forward to finding out. So.
All right, it's 8 o'clock. That's it for us. Next week, we're back in the studio. Until then, don't be afraid, only believe.